Hey everybody, this is a video, as mentioned in the last video, about some of my idiosyncrasies and preferences for formatting. These are just things that I like, and I'm going to go into why I like them and why I think they make sense. But as I mentioned in the previous video, you cannot lose any points for doing it in the normal way. Standard MLA format is totally fine. I'm not going to dock you for not doing it in my kind of like weird personal way. MLA format, as articulated in the MLA handbook and on the Purdue OWL, is perfectly acceptable for what you want to turn in. That said, there are a handful of differences. I think they make sense, and I think that you might like using them. Maybe, we'll put an asterisk by that. I think you might like it. I think it will make the paper look better, be visually more appealing, and ultimately easier to read as well. So if those are interesting to you, then by all means stick around. That said, I'm not going to have a Google form for this particular lecture, so could you skip it? Yep, and for some of you, you just left, and that's fine. I'm not upset by that at all. This is sort of just a little bit of extra if you want that. So let's take a look at some of the differences here. The biggest one has to do with spacing. So the MLA requires double spacing, and I think double spacing is absolutely hideous. So a lot of teachers might like double spacing if they handwrite on papers because it lets them write in the margins, like right here. You might have gotten drafts back before that were just bloody. They'd been marked up just in a really brutal way. You know, this is wrong, crossing every little thing out. And I don't do that for a number of reasons. One, I don't think that I have the time for it to sit down and like line edit everyone's papers. There's well over 100 of you, and just there's no way. There's no way I would have the time. Two, I don't think it's actually helpful. I never learned anything by doing that. If you want to do that kind of like in-depth line editing work to improve your writing, that is helpful, but it's not helpful in a vacuum. You would need to come to my office hours or set up a meeting with me, or set up kind of, I guess since we're not meeting now, an online like conversation thing, and we'll pull up one paragraph and then we'll go line by line together having a conversation about it. It does you no good to skip out on the process and just to see that, hey, somebody really ripped your writing apart. That's not helpful. Or alternatively, to go through and just make all of the changes that I suggest. Again, not helpful. So I don't really do that. I don't think it's useful, and I think it's really time intensive. So something that takes a lot of time and is useless, out. So I don't need it for that reason, all right? And some people think that double spacing is clearer. I also don't understand that at all. There are some ways of arranging text that are clearer. You can find an add-on for Chrome, I think, that changes the color of the end of a line. So the line sort of would shift from black to red, and then this line would be red at the beginning and then shift to green, and then it would green and shift to blue, right? And so you can see the connection between the lines that way, but double spacing doesn't improve clarity to me in any way, shape, fashion, or form. And in fact, it hurts clarity in one area, which is right here at the paragraph break, where when you are double spacing, there's no extra space here. It's the exact same amount of space as the previous line. This one's clear because this line ends in a single word, but all you have is this this tabbed over indentation right here. The indent is all you have to signal a new paragraph. I don't like it, and I think it makes the page look kind of sparse and ugly. Also, I think it messes up with our sense of how long a paragraph is, but that's because most of the text I read is not going to be double spaced. Anyway, let's go look at, here is my prospectus. I've blanked out the names of the people to whom I sent this for privacy reasons, and this is for a prospectus, not for a class, so that's, you know, it's a little bit different from your formatting, but mostly the same. My name, their names were there. Then we have the date it's due in the day, month, year format. My last name and page number in the top right-hand side, and the title is something other than English paper title. It's tells you what it is in the center, nothing else done to it. Now, off the bat, a couple of things you'll notice. If you watch the previous video, the H2 heading I don't use. I just bold text and give it its own line. That's my heading 2 choice of representation, right? That's personal preference. My heading 3, I also don't put on the same line. I violate the rules there as well. I italicize, and then that's its own heading. So we've got heading 2 and heading 3 there for me are bolded and italicized, as opposed to how they're represented with the all caps and then the italics on the same line in standard MLA format. You'll also notice that everything for me is single spaced. So when you have a manual entry, when you hit enter after a line in single space, it actually places a double space there for you. And when you type along, it doesn't, right? When you type your way into the next line, it doesn't create that extra space. So when you have a new paragraph, like here we can see we've got 3 paragraphs represented. 1, 2, 3. When you have a paragraph, when you've hit enter before and after, it creates a little bit of space. Now, if we're having to physically print all of this out, if we are, monks in the 1400s and we're copying books by hand, paper is a really precious resource, and we don't want to kill extra trees, and so we're really worried about saving space, and so we collapse we write really small, and we want our lines to be really close together, and we're worried about spaces like this. But when we move to an online format or a digital format, it doesn't cost us anything, right, to have a whole line of space. So instead of doing an indentation, instead of hitting tab, which I think makes the line ugly and breaks the cohesive nature of this line on this left alignment here. That left alignment, I think, gives it a very neat and orderly look, and the extra space tells us where a new paragraph is. And it's visually easy to interpret. We can see the new paragraphs as they go by. We can see their length, 3 short paragraphs in a row, and a longer paragraph, right? We can see this right here, and if we wanted to, we could get rid of the page gap too. So I choose that single spacing intentionally because I think it's easier to read, because I think it looks nicer and shows a separation between paragraphs and gives a more accurate understanding of the actual length of a paragraph. Following from line to line is just as easy. And if I do have any sort of comments I'm going to make, I can highlight and insert a comment because, technology enables me to do that. A couple of notes here too. This is not formatted correctly, actually, in retrospect. Why is that size 10 and this size 11? It should all be size 10. There we go. So I actually do use footnotes in my writing if I have permission from my the people who are grading it, right? And I know that MLA format doesn't. So MLA does this with notes at the end. They may do footnotes too. But I would never use endnotes like this. I don't like endnotes. I think they're silly. Do they use footnotes? Let's just take a gander here. I don't think so. No footnotes. Yeah, they do the endnotes. By the time you're to the end of the paper, those endnotes are utterly useless. You don't remember them, and it's annoying to have to flip back and forth. So I much prefer footnotes, and if you want to use footnotes, I think that's totally fine. An occasion when you would use footnotes, by the way, is whenever you've got like a piece of information you want to give a little bit more info about, but it's kind of a rabbit hole and it doesn't lead to your next point, or you feel like you need to put something in parentheses, a big long explanation of something, or hedging, like this is not to say that I am saying blah blah blah. That's a time when you could use a footnote, and that would be appropriate. So the next major difference, let's scroll down to the works cited page. Now for this document it's a little different, so I have a working bibliography, but this would be a works cited page for you. And a couple of things. If you're in Microsoft Word like I am, you can actually go to the References tab here and manage sources. And then as you add sources in, you can copy them over and it will automatically update your works cited page. It's a really useful feature for Microsoft Word, and I strongly encourage you to use it. I think it just makes life a lot easier. That's how I've entered all of these in, which is why they're formatted so nicely. As long as you've got the right information, it'll continue to update, which is great. Another few notes right here. Oh wait, what was I going to say about this? Oh yes. The DOI, the digital object identifier that comes with some citations, I don't include those because I don't know anyone who's ever used them. Maybe people have, and they're just not telling me about it. That's entirely possible. But I don't use a DOI because a DOI is, let's click on, that's ugly. Let's click off of that. A DOI is something that I've never used, that digital object identifier. That number, I think it makes the citations look ugly and it's useless to me. Same thing with the URL. URL is Uniform Resource Locator, and it's supposed to help you find stuff. URLs change all the time. And if you try to track down anything that's a few years old with a URL, it's gone. Or the page gets updated and the material gets moved. That's not helpful to me. I have much better luck finding sources by Googling what's there or by taking the title and plugging it into a database or something like that. I don't use the DOI, I don't use the URL, and I think they make the citation long and hideous. So those are absent in my bibliography or my works cited page, right? So if you would like to avoid using those as well because you think they make it ugly, please do. Ultimately, the impression that this gives to me is something that's very kind of like clean and neat because of the single spacing, because everything is aligned left. You can't see my hand just like scraping down the side, but it's all aligned left. I get a very neat sense of where everything is. It makes block quotes clearer because they're the only thing that's indented. I much prefer it. So the standards are mostly the same. There's just a few things that are a little bit different here and there. If you want to do it this way, you are totally welcome to. If you want to do it the standard MLA way, you're welcome to do that as well. Thanks. You guys stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you when I see you.